So welcome to this first demo video on the course B10 Python for AI. We're going to talk about support vector machines. So briefly going to recap on some key ideas behind this. So what we're doing with support vector machines is trying to think of a bundle of two groups, such as the light blue spots here and the pink spots here, and create a boundary between the two groups to divide the groups. And where we position that boundary across the lines L1, L2, L3, and so on, and different variations of these green lines, um, is something that we can optimize within the model. So it's defined decision between a different point of a line between these two different groups, where we're creating data within a 2D space, and here our decision is a line which is one-dimensional, and therefore in these models where you might have a features with many dimensions, thus creating a model with, for example, n-dimensional data, our margin will be in n-1 dimensions. So this is a linear effect, and we're mainly dealing with linear effects for our bacterial dataset that we're going to use throughout this series of practicals. They contain features like colony size, growth rate, and the zone of inhibition. So just three main features for a very simple model of simple dataset. Um, the colony size refers to the colony diameter in millimeters. The growth rate, optical density, refers to the increase per hour, and the zone of inhibition refers to how effective the antibiotic is. We have 1,000 isolates per group, and what we're trying to do is classify them into resistant or sensitive. And obviously, we have to separate that between the training data and the testing data. So what we're going to do is install XGBoost on Google Colab and apply that. And we're going to also install key libraries, NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib, Seaborn, and others. These are mainly to allow us to manipulate the data, generate the data, manipulate the data, and visualize it. And that was the standard import commands in Python with the using of as to nickname particular packages for simplicity of writing code. And these follow conventions as well. What we're going to use is the sklearn package to split our data into testing and training components. We're also going to use the standard scalar and label encoder aspects from that as well. And we're also going to be creating confusion matrix later from the start as well, and as computing receiver operating curves or area under the curve scores to create a visual representation of how effective the different how this particular model is. So we're going to use XGBoost, and then what we're going to try to do is create a plot, and therefore you have to set key parameters up to create it in the right kind of way. We're creating a figures directory to which all our figures will be written out. And we're just checking that the libraries are loaded and the figure directory is there. What we're going to do is create a seed, create 1,000 isolates per group, and create one thing to note is that each of the groups has a similar variances. So if we change that, we might get different results. And what we're going to do is create the colony size as a normal distribution for the two different groups. And same with the rate of growth and zone of inhibition. And what you can see is that there's some subtle differences between the resistant, where the colony size is bigger and resistant than the susceptible. The rate of growth is slightly higher, and the zone of inhibition is understandably lower for the ones that are resistant because they're more resistant to the antibiotic. So we want to therefore create the data frame from this. So that's a bit like our data frame in R, where we have a set of columns, like colony size in millimeters, the growth rate, zone of inhibition, and what we can do is concatenate our values onto into this data frame. We can also assign the labels of R and S, which is n, where n is 1,000 samples, and then we can print it out as well to get the dimensions. So if we do that and get the group counts, we'll see a table like that where we're showing the counts here with of 1,000 in each group, and we can see the values for the colony size, growth rate, a zone of inhibition, as well as the classification. And what we've done with this data is make it quite difficult to classify. So you'll find that the models work to some extent, but are far from perfect. So what we're doing is just checking that our data set is Okay, so what we're going to do next before we do the support vector machine analysis is just do exploratory data analysis to plot it. So what we'll do now is move over to Google Colab where we can view this more effectively. Here's our Google Colab notebook, and you're all familiar with how to use this now, I would hope. What we can do is run these boxes here so we can install XGBoost, which should install reasonably quickly. And then we can run this function that we had already mentioned, which is importing the different libraries. Note for Google Colab, obviously you have only a certain amount of RAM that's available and a certain duration which will remain connected if you don't use it. So you may need to reinstall these at the start every time you use it. While those are running, we can set the next part running, and that's just to generate the data that we can view. So what you see is these wheels are spinning as they go through. The first one is finished because it stopped spinning, and the second one is now working. So what you can see as we scroll down is that's our data set there. So if clicking this icon, we can be able to see our full data set as we go through. And what we can do next is explore the data. So look at our features on colony size, growth rate, and zone of inhibition. And what we're adding is the labels there for the plot. What we have here is that we're creating 3 plots with a 12 by 4 uh, size. And what we're doing is for each of these components, we're trying to color the R and S by particular colors, which are denoted by this hash encoding here, basically red and blue. And then we're trying to bin these histograms to a particular level and a particular level of transparency. So maybe let's make that more transparent, and add some more bins just to make more resolved. And then we're adding some subtitles on this just to say we're looking at the feature distributions of R and S. So if we run this one, and what we'll see is that the levels of colony size, there's a wide variation within each group, which is created by our data at the start. And there's considerable overlap between the groups. The resistant are definitely bigger, but there's a lot of overlap too. And same with the growth rate. The resistant grow faster overall, but some of them grow quite slowly. And same with zone of inhibition. Most of the resistant have a smaller zone of inhibition. However, that's not true for all of them. So you can see that the differences between these two groups is small. And please note our figures are over here on the left as well. So what we can do then is look at are the phenotypes of resistance and sensitive. Again, color them again and create a pair plot. So what we're looking is the histograms of each of the data across the different variables. So here we have we're plotting the growth rate. The growth rate versus the colony size. What you can sort of see is that there are two different groups because the growth rate and the colony size are correlated with each other across the two groups. So not within the groups, but between the groups they are. You see there's the similar distributions for each of these variables. So if you look at the zone of inhibition versus colony size, that's anti-correlated. Same with zone of inhibition versus growth rate is anti-correlated as well because they're the opposite way around for each of those in terms of going from positive to negative. So we see that there again, this is all just to plot our data. And so what you can see there is that the pair plot function is a very, very handy one to use for exploratory data analysis. So what we're going to do is prepare the data for modeling. So what we're doing is using the LE fit transform function on the data frame. And what we're trying to do is take the testing and training data set to split it up, where we're splitting it up such that the testing side is 20% of the total amount, and the rest, the 80%, is for the training data set. And we're also encoding R as 1 and S as 0 to keep the data numerical, which is a better way to keep it. And what we're printing out there is the numbers that are allocated to each of the groups. We go 1600 in the training and 400 in the testing. So at the end, we're going to see if we can correctly classify those 200R and 200S correctly into those categories based on the features. So we're now going to apply the support vector machine analysis property. We're going to scale the data because the the data variables with larger features would bias that data. And what we see at the end is that the means after scaling are all zero and the standard deviations are all one. We can then train and evaluate. So what we're using is the function SVC. We're using a nonlinear kernel. The C margin is set to 1. The gamma parameter is set to scale. And we've got a random seed specified there. And what we're doing is comparing the fit of the training data versus our Y-train we had from before. And we're getting the predictions from that and then printing that out. So if we look at this now, what we see is that we have a precision and recall of about 0.74 to 0.77 altogether. And this kind of gives us an F1 about 0.75 or 76. There's more details here which are less important, but what we do see is the model's okay, but the data, again, if the differences between the groups are more subtle, then it can be hard to definitively categorize the data in the way we might like. What we can use as well is the function confusion matrix display to create a confusion matrix. So we have the same labels of resistant and sensitive. We're creating, illustrating that we can create the off-diagonal ones the ones that we either miss or misclassify as the ones that we have to look at further. Now, if we run this, which is also in our figures folder, what we see is that we correctly classified 149 susceptibles, 154 resistant, but we missed 46 of the resistant, and same for 51 of the susceptibles. So our model has that level of performance, which kind of means that it's okay, but if you're misclassifying 24% of your samples, that may be a major issue. It depends on what your question is. We can also create a decision boundary for the zone division versus colony size in a plot here. So what we're doing is taking our data and then trying to predict its contour lines across the plot and saving that figure to our output data. And then we're mapping onto this the plot boundary from the SVM we had before to see how well classified. And what we can see there is that these are the normalized metrics for zone of inhibition and colony size. They're slightly anti-correlated, which you can see there's more blue points on the left and less on the more red on the right. And what you see at the same time is a lot of mixing between them because the differences between the two features is relatively small overall. So you can see, therefore, it's quite difficult to draw a clear decision line between these two models. You can see it's non-linear, and you see it's a challenging data set to deal with in terms of having a perfect decision boundary between them. When we look at the C parameter, if we have a low C parameter, we have a wide margin, which tolerates errors, but it may underfit. If we have a high C, which you had at the start, that gives us a narrow margin and try to classify everything correctly, but may overfit. And therefore, there's kind of a balance between these two. So if we run this function where we're looking at the SVM data again using SVC, where we have a C is a value is going from 0.1 to 1 to a higher value. We can look at the outputs for this and plot this out. So what you see is that the shape of the decision boundary varies. So on the right you get what is very much overfitting. Does it turn to fit a perfect boundary? And what we see on the left, whereas 0.1 is maybe a more simple model, almost linear, and the middle one is a slightly curved non-linear one. So by testing the range of C values, we can kind of get a sense of how effective they are. So maybe changing this from 10 to 1 and this one to 0.5, we can get a more effective distribution of values at the end. So we're just waiting for that to run. That concludes this video on support vector machines. Please see the next video on gradient boosting for more.